Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have Miss Ingrid with us. She is an immigration attorney, and she's going to be talking about her journey coming to the U.S. and becoming an immigration attorney. Welcome, Ingrid, to the podcast.
Thank you, Heidi, for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to just be a part of this project and be a part of this and share your story, which is very important and very needed as you went through the immigration process yourself and then now you help others go through there. So tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce who you are, what you do, and then we can get started on life back in Brazil.
Sure. So my name is Ingrid Perez. I guess I'll start with my job title, right? Immigration attorney. I'm also the founder and owner of my own law firm here in Orlando, Florida, IBP Immigration Law. And I've been doing this for a few years now, and I help immigrants, achieve the American dream. I'm also a mom, a former New Yorker, now a Floridian, okay. And, of course, an immigrant as well. So everything really has come full circle for me in this space.
I bet. So tell us about life back in Brazil.
Yeah. So I grew up in Brazil. It's the city smack in the middle of the country, kind of like the Midwest of Brazil.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people don't know, about it or where it is. My mom was alone. She raised myself and my brother by herself. And life was really hard, but also life was really good because we had such, a huge family, and I spent a lot of time with my cousins, my aunts and uncles. There are a lot of good things that, I remember from growing up in Brazil, but it was very difficult, and especially when I think about my kids now and their lives and how I grew up and the things that I experienced, for sure. It's just such a big difference. And it was difficult, like daily life was hard, right? Yeah. We didn't have a car. We had to ride the bus. My mom working to provide for us was very difficult, and she did her best and really wanted to make sure that we had access to swim lessons, music lessons, ballet, all those things. But, it got to a point where it was very difficult for her to continue doing it by herself. The economy and the opportunities in Brazil are not great. For as long as she could, she sent us to private school. The education system in Brazil, the public education system is not great. It got to a point where she was like, I can't afford to send you to private school anymore. And that was the point, I think, that my mom realized that, Brazil wasn't for us. She needed a different place for her kids to grow up and, get a shot at having a great life, right?
Yeah.
So when I was about 9 years old, when I was 9 years old, just about to turn 10, is when we came to the U.S. It was February of 1994. And so a very long time ago.
Winter.
Yes, winter.
Dead in the middle of winter.
Dead in the middle of winter. Exactly. So, so that was sort of like, me growing up in Brazil. And I think I grew up in Brazil long enough to really understand, the difference between growing up here and growing up in Brazil. So I have a lot of those memories, and, I remember a lot of my childhood. So it's not like all is forgotten, and I sometimes think that, it's only been until very recently where I really felt like, okay, I belong here, because it takes a long time for you to sort of, just feel that you're constantly feeling like you're an outsider when you're an immigrant.
And having to prove yourself and things like that. How many siblings do you have?
So I have a brother on my mom's side.
Okay.
And I have two sisters on my dad's side. I didn't grow up with my dad in Brazil. I actually got to know my dad when I was, in my 20s.
Oh,
so that's when we reconnected, and that's when I, reconnected with that side of the family. And they live in Brazil.
And so when you guys came, so it was you, your brother, and your mom.
Exactly.
Wow.
And my brother decided to go back, so he's living there. He's married, and my mom is still here.
Is she in Florida or in New York?
My mom is in Florida now.
Okay.
She was in New York up until recently, but she moved down to Florida, and she's retired.
Okay.
So she's staying with us until she officially retires in Brazil.
Oh, nice. Okay, so she's going to go back to Brazil. And so tell us about, going to New York. Did she have family? Did you guys have family in New York?
We had nobody in New York.
Oh, my God.
We had nobody in the United States. So everybody said that my mom was crazy for coming to the U.S. with two little kids. But my mom she said that, she's not leaving her kids. Wherever she's going, her kids are going with her. So, and people called her crazy. And I remember my aunts and my uncle saying, just leave them here. We'll take care of them. And, my mom was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly how she managed to come, but I know that, just networking, saying, putting out there, like, hey, we want to go to Brazil, we want to go to the U.S. She managed to come. So we got tourist visas. And this was like in 1994. I remember that much, right? I remember arriving at JFK Airport and opening the window of the airplane and just seeing mountains of snow.
Oh, man,
And I was just like, oh my God, what is that? We didn't even really have like jackets because we had no idea.
Yeah.
We just had like, tracksuits and sweaters.
Oh my gosh.
So we come through the airport. We were admitted, and then I guess whoever was supposed to pick us up, at the airport didn't know my mom was coming with 2 kids. And my mom did not tell them because she was afraid that they would say no. So I do remember that look on his face when my mom's like, okay, hi, it's me. Nice to meet you. Oh, by the way, I brought my 2 kids.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So he picked us up and brought us to the apartment where my mom had arranged to get a room for us. And we had nothing. We had nothing. There was a mattress on the floor and that's it.
Wow.
And my mom had very little money and it was cold. It was shocking. As a kid, I was expecting, us to be in a beautiful house with a white picket fence that I saw in the movies. And it was nothing like that. Oh my God, where am I? I want to go back.
Yeah.
And those first few months were very, very difficult, especially because it was very cold.
Yeah.
Away from family, away from friends. And, we were at the mercy of people that we didn't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can only imagine. You reminded me of like my husband's story because he also came when he was 9 from the Dominican Republic. And he was just telling me like same thing, New York. And he was just like, where are the trees? Why are there no trees in New York? And I just found that so funny. But okay, so landed in New York in the middle of winter with nothing. Did you learn English here or back home?
I learned English here. So we started school, I think, about a month and a half after we arrived. And I was, put back a grade. So I had finished third grade and I started, I went back into 3rd grade. So I was the oldest. And at first I didn't know anything. But kids pick up very early.
Yeah.
And I learned in English really quickly. And my brother did as well. So I think by the following school year, like that summer we learned English and we were good. Like 4th grade, I was speaking English and, I was just really a great student the rest of, the way. So
did they put you back up the grade you were supposed to? No, they just kept you. Okay.
I just stayed, so I just continued on. Okay,
cool. And so besides the snow and the weather, can you remember like any other like cultural shock? Like, oh my gosh, this is different from Brazil or anything like that?
The people were a little different as well because, in Brazil, I was so used to having a big family around and just that warmth and, like just constant family gatherings. And of course, not that the people were different, but we didn't have that here.
Yeah,
so it was hard to have that, camaraderie and build those relationships. I thought that was difficult. And I was also just like really intrigued at sort of the diversity as well, because in Brazil, everybody's Brazilian, right? You don't think about it in terms like, well, I am Italian or I'm Irish or I'm this or that, So I think that part of it really intrigued me. I didn't know how to really navigate that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm Brazilian, and so that part I thought to me was really interesting. The way that we sort of, identify ourselves in the United States.
Did you have to like educate people of like where Brazil was or anything like that?
Sometimes. I mean, a lot of people don't know that Brazilians speak Portuguese, that all of that. I mean, I think that's not so common now, especially in Florida where there's so many Brazilians. But for sure, I had to, educate, or tell people, actually Brazilians who speak Portuguese. And I remember when I started school, I was in ESL classes and, it was me and one other Spanish speaking boy.
Oh my goodness.
So we were like the only ones. So yeah, and I think I was like the first Brazilian. A lot of times I was the first Brazilian,
So you speak English, Portuguese, any other languages?
I speak Spanish as well. I mean, it's not great, but I can get by. I joke around and I call it Portunhol. It's like Portuguese and Spanish
So
mixed.
kind of like Spanglish, but
Exactly. And I get by. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome because I'm assuming you have a lot of Hispanic clients, or you'll be able to help.
I do have a lot of Spanish-speaking clients. So, I mean, I think it's funny because if you speak Portuguese, and I think also for like a lot of Brazilian immigrants, they had to learn Spanish, right? Because that is how, I think the Spanish-speaking immigrants were here, before we were, I think, predominantly. So Brazilians had to adapt to Spanish and learn Spanish. So a lot of us, learn Spanish and we can speak it.
Because Portuguese is also rooted in Latin.
Exactly.
So is Spanish. And there's a lot of similar words.
Yeah.
I've noticed because I remember when I worked at a doctor's office, we used to have a lot of Brazilian oh my gosh, patients. Yes, thank you, patients. I was going to say clients. It's like, no, it's not clients. Patients. And so when they were speaking, like I could pick up on a few words because there was like a few, and I was like, but it's not the same though.
No, it's not. And I think if you're Spanish speaking, it's hard to learn Portuguese. That's what I hear.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, but that's just sort of like the word on the street,
Okay. And so tell us about becoming an attorney. So is that something that you knew you always wanted to do, or how did that come about?
I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer. I just always knew, I think, from the moment we got to the United States, I knew that it was such a huge sacrifice for my mom, and my job was to make it. She said, I'm here for you, for you guys. We're doing this for you. This is your opportunity. So I always felt, the weight of that. And I took that very seriously. So I always did really well in school. I pushed myself. I always tried my best. And, I was the first person in my family to go to college. I had no idea what the working world looked like in the United States. So the only reference that I really had were my teachers. So when I went to college, I decided to, become a teacher. So I was a teacher for about 2 years. I worked as an English language arts teacher in Harlem, in New York, teaching 6th and 7th graders, which was challenging, but also prepared me for so much.
Okay.
And I was young and, wasn't really sure if teaching was what I wanted to continue doing. And then I knew I had to go get my master's. I knew I had to, continue with my education. And at the time, the school that I was working at was closing. It was shutting down. So I was like, well, I'd have to go get my master's and maybe, special education or something like that. I'd have to find another job, or I can just pivot, right? And this was around 2000 and so I was teaching from 2008 to 2010, and that was during the crisis, right?
Yep.
So I was like, I just want to pivot. I want to do something completely different. And I just, thought, well, I'll just go be a lawyer. It's fancy. It sounds, I'll make money. Like I had all these thoughts. And I was like, okay, and I was always kind of drawn to challenges and doing difficult things. And I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer,
That is challenging.
So then I studied for the LSATs and, did terribly at first. And then I just kept getting better. And then I decided to apply to law school. And I got into a bunch of different law schools, and I got into Fordham Law School in New York.
Okay.
And once I got into Fordham Law School, I was like, okay, this is the law school that I want to go to, because when I was in high school, up until, maybe first year of community college, I was undocumented. We didn't have papers. So my future was very uncertain. I was like, oh my God, I'm here in the United States. I'm doing so well, but what's going to happen to me, right? Wow. So I and my mom was fortunate enough to have an employer who wanted to sponsor us for a green card.
Yeah.
There was a new law under Bill Clinton that had passed, and this was our window of opportunity. So my mom's employers decided to help us. And it was a long and stressful process. And I remember my mom spending a lot of money and time and being worried. And of course, I'm a teenager. I don't really understand. I knew that it was serious, but I didn't really understand. And I remember going to my lawyer's office in Long Island, sitting in her office and looking behind her and seeing a map with all these little pins and she's like, yeah, these are all the people that I've helped.
Wow.
And that image always stuck with me. So I have a map now in my office with little pins.
No way.
Yes.
Oh, that's so
So
awesome.
I just remember that. So I think maybe that had something to do with me wanting to be a lawyer, but I didn't know that I wanted to be an immigration lawyer. So anyway, I actually went to community college first, but once we got our green cards is when I was able to transfer to Hunter College and focus on becoming a teacher.
Okay.
Because I was able to get scholarships and all that. Up until then, I was hustling, bartending, waitressing, working at Starbucks.
Everything, yes.
To pay for school. So then, and when I was in high school, my dream was to go to Fordham University. I don't know why, in the Bronx. And when I got into Fordham Law School, I said, okay, I'm going to go to Fordham Law School because I never got to go to the university.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is my school. So I went to Fordham Law School. And, of course, I think every law student begins thinking that they're going to be like the smartest one in the class. And we get, slapped left and right because you are in a completely different world. Law school was extremely, extremely challenging. The first year was really tough.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to make it. And I had questions. And I was like, oh, my God, I don't belong here. I just felt incompetent and, oh, my God, I just signed up for all these loans. But, I was committed. Mm-hmm. And I made it through first year. Second year, I still wasn't sure about the kind of law that I wanted to go into.
Okay.
I tried different things. I, did different clinics. I did moot court. I did all these different things. And then the second semester, my second year, I did a housing clinic. And in that housing clinic, I got an opportunity to do a mock trial. And the professor worked as an attorney for the legal aid housing unit in Manhattan. And I just did really great at that mock trial. And I just felt like I was home because it kind of brought back my experience being in front of a bunch of students, trying to get their attention, tell a story and trying to teach them and, tell a story in really simple terms to my jury, my fake jury. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do. So he sort of pushed me to apply at the Legal Aid Society. And I worked at the Legal Aid Society as a public defender in Manhattan for about 5 years after law school.
Wow.
So that was an amazing experience. It was not what I had intended on, focusing on, but it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
And it was great because I got to experience things that, most of my law school friends didn't because a lot of them went to big law firms and I went into public interest.
Yes.
So I was doing trials, hearings, going to court every single day,
oh my
seeing the juicy cases, watching these really amazing, talented attorneys, conduct trials and cross-examinations and jury selection and give opening statements, closing statements, and argue, the law in front of the judge and all of that. And it was just an amazing experience. And I got to defend a lot of people in New York, low-income New Yorkers, silly crimes and more serious crimes.
Yeah.
And, after being there for about 5 years before I left, was when I was starting to do the serious felonies. And those are crazy. But it was just such a great experience because it really made me such a great lawyer, I think. And I guess that's how I decided to become a lawyer in the field of law that I chose.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended on, immigration. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't until I moved to Florida.
So what brought you to Florida?
So my husband and I, we were living in Manhattan. We had 2 kids and it was cold and we were like, we just want to be somewhere warm. We had just returned from a trip to California and we were like, we want to be somewhere warm. And, New York is great, but being with 2 little kids and in the winter, it's just tough. So we were like, okay, let's move to California. And we looked at homes in California. We're like, California is too far. Let's not do California. And I'm like, wait, your mom is in Florida. You have family in Florida. Let's go to Florida. So we're like, okay, Florida it is. We had always visited and, came all the time. So that's how we moved to Florida. He was able to transfer, but I wasn't, right? Because I was working at the Legal Aid Society in Manhattan, working as a public defender. My attorney license is from the state of New York. Yep. So I couldn't get reciprocity here in Florida. I would have to take the bar in Florida. And I was like, well,
wow.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I've always wanted to transition into immigration, and this is going to be the perfect opportunity for me because I can practice immigration law with, my New York State license anywhere in the country.
Yep.
So I didn't have to take the bar again. So that's how I sort of transitioned into immigration law.
Okay,
when I moved to Florida.
For those who don't know, immigration is a federal
Exactly.
thing, so you can practice or help clients in any
Yeah.
state. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So moved to Florida, and then did you start your practice right away, or did you find a practice to be able to go
So
first?
I didn't have immigration experience, so I just started to kind of network, and I joined the American Immigration Lawyers Association and started to get into the community. And, you know, I figured out that, hey, I knew some people from New York here in Florida, right? So I just started like networking and learning a little bit about immigration, about how the business of immigration works. And I met this woman, and her and I decided to partner. And we opened our own law firm. And we were doing it for about 4 years, and we grew it pretty, you know, we had about 9 employees at one point,
Wow.
and we had, you know, a pretty good run, but, you know, we decided to go our separate ways. And then in January of 2023 is when I just kind of started doing my own thing by myself with IBP Immigration Law. And it's just been really a continuation of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it's been great. I mean, it's been growing ever since.
Yeah. How many employees do you have now?
So right now it's a total of 7, and
Okay.
I'm looking for more.
Yes.
So we're growing, and I have 7 employees, which is kind of crazy. You know, it
Yes.
makes me feel like a grown up to have all those employees. You know, but it's great. Yeah.
That's great. Is there another attorney practicing with you, or
So I had another attorney. He left, so I'm looking to fill that role.
fill the? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So here in Central Florida, and so what visas or what cases do you guys, because, you know, immigration is vast.
Yes.
So what visas do you guys focus on?
So immigration is vast, like you said, and for me, I choose to focus on employment-based immigration, and I also do a bit of family-based immigration.
Okay.
So really, this decision was very strategic for me because I want to be a master at what I do, you know? So I decided to limit my practice and limit myself to certain types of visas. So I do a lot of visas for people with extraordinary ability, people with exceptional abilities. I do a lot of H-1Bs, O's. Like I do, immigration is an alphabet soup of visas, but those are the kinds of visas that I do. And I also help companies hire foreign talent, whether through, you know, sponsor them for permanent green or for permanent residency or temporary visas. And I do also, you know, some family cases like marriage-based green cards or green cards for parents of U.S. citizens or children of U.S. citizens and so forth and so on. I also do a lot of citizenship applications, which was really great.
Yeah.
Helping people become U.S. citizens is really nice.
Such an exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when my dad finally passed his citizenship test. Poor guy, he like I think he failed like 3 times because he gets nervous and then he's like, I forget everything. I'm like, Puppy, you know this, like you know this. And so it was just such an exciting time when he finally passed, and we went to his ceremony, and so that's I can see how your face lit up when you talked about that, because such an exciting time for immigrants. And so so those are the type of visas you work with. Is there any misconception about regardless of like the the visas you work with or just immigration in general, any misconception that you're like, okay, no, this is not what it is, that you would like to clear up?
You can't just apply to become a citizen. That's not how it works. There's no such thing as, well, why can they just, apply? They've been here for so long. Why didn't they do it? It doesn't work that way. It absolutely does not work that way. Like for me, for example, I had a short window of opportunity to apply for my green card based on an employer that was willing to sponsor us. And that was based on the law that's not in effect anymore. So that doesn't, there's no way to do it that way anymore. I think the biggest misconception also about immigration is just how much immigration impacts everything and how immigration is connected to everything. So I always tell, when I talk to law students and they're thinking about going into immigration, I say, okay, do you like to be in court? Do you like to litigate? Well, there's a space for you in immigration because you can do removal defense. You can be in court every single day, honing your skills, doing hearings and things like that. Do you like to help families, right? Do you like to do those kinds of cases? If you do, then there is an area for you. Do you like sports? You can do visas for athletes. You can do visas for people coming to the United States to train. Do you like companies? Do you like setting up businesses? Do you like startups? There are investors visas, right?
Wow, yeah.
Do you like working with, amazing, talented people who want to come to the United States, but maybe they don't have an employer or they don't have a family member to help bring them here? You can work, with visas, you can do visas for people with extraordinary ability and exceptional ability. And I've worked on some cases for people who have done incredible things. Like I have a client who put a satellite into space for his country.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have another client who, was invited to the White House to speak and all these amazing things.
Yeah.
So, these people are doing incredible things. And they want to come to the United States. And it's never easy. It's slow. It's never easy. It's bureaucratic. You can't just apply. And before you become a citizen, you have to be a green card holder. You have to be a permanent resident. So there's a lot of misconception. I can go on for days.
No, there really, really is. And this is why I appreciate talking to immigration attorneys so they can, talk about their work because, again, there's so many visas and so vast, but it's all a process.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people don't understand. It's not like, in 2 weeks or anything. Like, it's like years. And there's a lot of money involved and a lot of fees. And one of the things that I learned while doing this podcast was like, one of the attorneys told me that like the forms, like you have to be very careful because these are legal forms and not just anybody can fill them out. And if there's like one thing off, like it can just like throw the whole case away. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that happened to me yesterday, actually.
Oh, no way.
I sent a case for a person trying to bring him here on a visa and I checked a box incorrectly. And the case was rejected, not denied, but it was sent back to me because I checked one box incorrectly. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like such a silly oversight. So here we are having to send it again. Things like that happen, right? Yeah. And immigration is so much more than filling out forms because you have to know the regulations, you have to know the applicable evidence to meet each criteria, and all of that, and whether or not the person qualifies for the benefit they're seeking. So,
and it's changing constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, like that law that was valid in 94 is no longer valid. Right. So people don't have that pathway anymore to be citizens. So so a lot of things to keep up with.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. Any advice? Well, you say you talk to students. So like any advice for anyone who is out there maybe looking to get into law school?
My gosh, I wish I had known that, there are so many different areas of law that you could specialize in. I think that, if you want to go to law school and you're not sure about what kind of lawyer, what kind of field of law you want to go into, it's fine. I think, you can figure that out and your law school years is your time to sort of try different things out. I think the most important thing is to be completely committed to your studies and committed to the process because it is expensive. It is a lot of time and effort on your part. So I think as long as you're committed and you have a passion for the legal field and for fairness, justice, I think you'll be okay, And of course, I think you also have to know your learning style. This is more of like a practical tip.
Yeah.
You have to know your learning style because when you go to law school, and I know this because, as a former teacher, I can give this tip. When you go to law school, the way that you're taught is completely different than what you're used to. You're really, you're responsible for your learning, right? So I think being comfortable advocating for yourself in law school is so important because if you don't understand a concept, you need to go to office hours. If you're having a hard time with your mental health, you need to go to the counselor's office. If you're having, issues with whatever it is as far as your studies, seek help and advocate for yourself. Don't be embarrassed because, maybe you think you're not the smartest or whatever. That's something that I really wish I had done more for myself in law school. Advocating for myself and my learning, and my opportunities. I think, maybe I would have done things a little bit differently, but I'm glad that the way things worked out. And, when it comes time to studying for the bar, same thing. Know your learning style because everything is sort of boilerplate, right? If that bar prep course doesn't work for you, figure out a way to learn a little bit different, right? I took the bar. I had a baby in law school. My son was born a week after my last final. And I was like, I have a bar exam in 2 months. How am I going to study with a newborn?
Yeah.
So I had to adapt because the bar exam prep course wasn't working for me. So I had to adapt. And I adapted to my own learning style. And I ended up passing. So Not because I'm the smartest, just because I figured out a way to make
what
it
works
happen
for you.
me.
Yeah, because everybody learns differently and everybody understands concepts differently. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's out there, just, figure out your learning style and don't be embarrassed to advocate for yourself, because that's, it's big.
Yeah.
How many times did it take you to pass the bar?
Once.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's one of the things I've heard is like it takes, it could take multiple times. But oh my gosh, that's so cool. Thank you again so much for your time, for that advice. That was really, really good advice. And just thank you for sharing your journey and being open to your journey and what you do and helping, immigrants, come here and be able to live their American dream. And I love ending the episodes with, what does the American dream mean to you?
Oh, that is such a deep, profound question. I think the American dream for me means feeling like I can make it, right? Means feeling that I have achieved what I came here to achieve. And I think at that point, I feel that even though my business is still growing, I still have struggles. It's 3 steps forwards, 2 steps back sometimes, but that is part of the American dream, right?
Yeah.
You know that if you work hard and you dedicate yourself and, you do a good job, you can make it. And I think that is still very much real, at least for me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Mami Podcast.